Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gretchen and today I am back with another Women's Prize for Fiction review, and today is the long-listed title Nightbloom by Adzo, Medie-A. And this is a book that I enjoyed so much and I cannot wait to talk about it. So this book follows two primary characters. We have Akorfa and we have Selassie, and they are cousins that are growing up in Ghana. We meet them very early on in their lives, and they grow up not necessarily as cousins, but almost as sisters. And the book is broken up into two different perspectives. So we start with Akorfa and then we eventually move on to Selassie. And what we learn is that they are super close, and as they start to grow up, there is a divide that forms, and there are specific events that occur, and I don't want to necessarily get into what those are because it would definitely be spoiler territory. But we have Akorfa, who is very much an academic, and her dream and her parents' dream is for her to be a doctor, and she has this dream of going to Harvard. So we have her being in Ghana at the time of her growing up and her going through all of the most prestigious schools in the area. And as we get more into the story, we do learn that Selassie loses her mother, and once her mother dies, that's kind of when the division really starts to set in. So we have Akorfa, who is, like I said, kind of the golden child, and she has all of these prospects in the world, and you know, the world is her oyster. And we have Selassie, who has now lost her mother, and she is with a father who doesn't really value her education or really have great plans for his daughter. And the resentment starts to settle between Akorfa and Selassie. And as I mentioned, there are fundamental things that are happening that are creating a wedge and a divide between these two cousins. So we start the book with Akorfa's perspective, and we follow her through her childhood. We get her side of the story. We learn more about what has happened to her and her version of why their lives have drifted apart. And then we also get to Akorfa as an adult, and we get her trials through college. We get her perspective on moving to the States to attend university, and ultimately the life that she ends up in, and learning about, you know, her husband and her children. And we follow Akorfa through adulthood, still not knowing fully what was Selassie's side of the story. So part one is Akorfa, and then we get to Selassie, which is part two. So we travel back in time to the beginning. So we start once again with their childhood, and through Selassie's narrative, we learn a different side of the story and why we got to the point that we did with their estrangement. So it was such a fascinating read in the sense that you never really do know what the other person, if you're one side of a fight or a battle, you know everything that you're thinking, you know your motivations, you know your intentions, but how can you truly know what the other person is thinking or what they're going through? Of course we can speculate, but speculation isn't fact. So are wedges driven into relationships for the right reasons? Should their relationship have ever been impacted? Did they have similar things that happened to them that could have actually, instead of creating a wedge, actually bring them closer? So when we get to Selassie's narrative, we start to fill in all those gaps. And I just have to say, this book was brilliant. I loved this book so much. And I will say, as far as, and I'm not saying that one of the two characters was right in anything, but I will say that I absolutely loved Selassie's side of the story. And that's very interesting because obviously when we're starting out with Acorfa, we are getting the bad side and we're hearing about the bad side of Selassie. But then once we start to get into her motivations and what she actually went through and learning about what her life was, or what Selassie's life was as an adult, I absolutely fell in love with her as a character. And there are, obviously we talk about a lot of events that happened leading up to their split from each other and everything that happened up to them getting into young adulthood. But we learn in Selassie's side so much more about the adult life, which is what I truly found fascinating. So this was a time that didn't involve Acorfa. They had since been separated and they were no longer speaking, and all of the things that Selassie made of herself and what her life was post Acorfa, it was so good. It was so good. I absolutely flew through this book. These characters were amazing. I absolutely love Selassie as a character. I hated her at times, I'm not gonna lie, but she was a spitfire. She knew what was right, she knew what was wrong, and she was not afraid to stand up to anyone if they went against something that she believed in. And I just found that to be so admirable. And then when we get later on in the book and they reunite as adults, we learn about the things that tied them together. And as I mentioned, when you have those disagreements or you have those fights, you're only knowing or speculating what the other person is thinking or what they have gone through. And sometimes we're both stubborn and we don't talk things through or learn that we actually have a common thread that could or should bring us closer together instead of pulling us further apart. And I loved this book so much. I wish that it had made it to the shortlist. As I mentioned, I honestly think that if it had been shortlisted, it would be my winner prediction. I loved it so much. This was totally unexpected for me as well. And the reason is because I started to read the book and probably like maybe 30 pages in, I was still unsure. Like, I was enjoying myself and I kind of saw, or I thought I saw, where this book was going and what it was going to turn into, and I could not have been more wrong. This book was so unique. The plot was so different than anything that I have read before. And I just thought that the author did an amazing job. The writing was gorgeous, and I am so happy that this book was longlisted. I am not gonna lie, I had this book on my radar a few months ago and I kept putting it off. I actually had it out from the library twice, but I wasn't hearing anything about it. I wasn't hearing any reviews. No one was really talking about it. So I was like, you know what? If this book was good, I would be hearing things, and I'm not. So I sent it back to the library, and I actually completely removed it from my TBR. But I am so glad that it was longlisted, so that it forced me to pick this up, because this could very easily be one of my favorite books of the year. So I highly recommend this if you love that drama of, I know they're cousins, but if you enjoy sister dynamics, this is very close to that. And also, if you like a book where you have strong female characters and you have a strong female character that not only stands up for herself, but she takes on the world, and she is not going to take any prisoners, and she's not going to sleep until everyone that has done her wrong is given their just desserts, this is the book for you. I love this book. I hope more people decide to pick it up and we get more people talking about it. I'm gonna have to check. I don't know too much about this author. I will have to go back to see if she has a backlist of titles, because I want to read more from this author. I will definitely be picking up her future books as she writes them, and this was a hidden gem that I am so glad that the Women's Prize uncovered for me and forced me to read it. I hope that if you are thinking about reading this book, that you take the plunge and give it a chance. I'm curious if any of you out there felt the same way that I did about this book, and yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And until we read again, bye.